Things such as freedom and money and impact and all this stuff don't land with me anymore when it comes to success. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and there beside you as you wipe your eyes and wonder about what is happening in the day ahead, you notice a lamp beside you on the table with a sticky note saying, "Rub me on it." So without hesitation, you say, "Why not?" to yourself. And then poof, the genie is hovering above you and sounding like Robin Williams. He says, "Your wish is my command." You muster up a response in your sleep-dazed state, and as you begin to spurt out a clever question, a genie interrupts and he says, "And I'm kind of the cool genie. You can have as many wishes as you want." So, what would you do if you could have anything you want? Well, I'm sure that both you and I would probably have all the incredible experiences and fulfill all of our wishes. Just like having an endless bank account and being able to go down the supermarket aisle of life of all of the different offers and experiences that you could possibly dream of, would be scooting down the pleasure aisle with both arms out, piling in everything into our shopping trolley of experiences that we want. You'd have all the sexual fantasies played out with whoever you wanted, and then with all of them at once. You'd have the parties, the festivals, the weekend benders that even the rowdiest of rock stars couldn't keep up with. You'd sit on the throne of hedonism, happily telling yourself that you achieving and succeeding and attaining all of the desires is the best way for you to live your life. And we could go on like that for a long time. But as I would think, the second scoop of choc mint ice cream, it's never as good as the first. We would become a little tired and we'll become a little bored of it. As, let's be honest, the most pleasurable experiences can get a little bit tiring. We need to change it up. So after becoming bored and tired of the pleasure aisle, we would say, what about an adventure tonight? And we go on a conquest of rescuing princesses from dragons, fighting monsters, and playing the role of every action hero that we could ever think of. But then, even then, after a while, we would need more thrills. After all, when we know all that we can have is all we want, by the snap of our fingers, we'll be able to have the thrill and the pleasure, and it's not that going to be everlasting. So, for a second, come back from the daydream with me and answer this. Would you be happy if you could fill all of your desires? Now, as you think about your answer, let me share one story with you, and this one's actually a true one. I woke up not that long ago, but not to a genie, but to my own stressed, anxious mind. And I'd been ruminating all night long over the problems with my business, with my marriage, with money, with children, and all the more. And for years, I'd been tirelessly working, building my businesses, feeling like I was chewing glass in the pursuit of success. And I could feel like I was paying the price with my health, with my relationships, and honestly with my sanity. All of these feelings were normal in so much of the entrepreneurial world that we can be in. But all of these compromises were feeling out of alignment with what felt right at best and completely wrong at worst. As I walked downstairs in the dark to hopefully not wake up my wife with my constant tossing and turning in bed, I found myself having two problems. The first was having the problem that I was actually stressing about, but then I found myself having another thought behind it. And that was, I was frustrated because I didn't want to have to deal with the problem. I had a problem with the problem. The problem of having the problem was what I thought to myself, as it felt like a greased, slippery slide as I was just sliding down this anxiety awaiting for me. So if that sounds familiar, and if you know you're a smart, ambitious, highly capable person, you're here watching this or hearing this with me, either on YouTube or the podcast, because for the very least, you're wanting to solve a problem. And like so many entrepreneurs and business owners that I've talked to, this is at the root of their desires to wanting to be able to achieve more. You might be saying to yourself, well, when I sell my business, I'm going to be happy. When I get to $10 million, I'm going to have made it. Or some other variation of when I achieve X, I'm going to feel Y. All of which I've said to myself at some point as well. However, I can confidently say you can't out-earn a lack of fulfillment. You can't travel away that gnawing sense in your gut that you're on the wrong path. You can't buy enough expensive toys to fill a hole that was made for love. You're wanting to fulfill all of your desires. You're wanting to be able to get rid of all of your problems. And you're indulging in a fantasy of one day being in a state where you have no more problems to deal with. It probably sounds a little bit weird when I say it. So as I sat there in the dark, it came to me. Are we not all striving and working so hard to be able to solve all of our problems? And so much of this is in the hope and the idea that once we solve this next problem, then I'm going to be happy. The method in which we're all, and yes, this is very much me included, using to try and be happy is to have no more problems and to be able to achieve to get rid of those problems. So think about it right now. Name one achievement that you set out for that brought you everlasting happiness. Nope, I can't name one either. So why do you continue to think that achieving more, attaining the next goal, or getting the success that you've craved is going to be any different? It was truly answering this question for me that has been able to transform my life. But when I said to myself, once I get to $1 million a month, then I'll have made it, I knew I was on a stairway that was going nowhere. Because I asked myself, well, make what? Is what I tried to make sense of to myself. The destination that I was heading for at that point had finally shifted. This constant pursuit of more, this race to her horizon, the horizon that will never come because it's always a moving target with the consequence of inevitable frustration. It was about 2 years ago that I had the goal of building and selling my coaching company, which I thought I wanted to do because of two reasons. Firstly, I wanted to tell myself the story and to tell the world that I was good enough because I was able to build and sell a company. But also I wanted to achieve a certain level of financial freedom that comes from selling a multi-7-figure coaching business. Thankfully, I was able to sell that business and achieve financial freedom. But more importantly, I had the epiphany that in the final month of exiting that business, when everything was still in limbo, and I felt like I was living on a knife's edge, knowing that the milestone was so close that also it could just come crashing down at any second and just not come to fruition, as this is the way that I currently think about it. Desperately trying to control all of your circumstances in the hope of if I get everything the way that I want, I will finally be at peace. All of this is rooted in the thinking, I feel good if the circumstances are good. I feel bad if the circumstances are bad. Now, this leads to one of the major problems of this way of thinking, which is then you must have control of your circumstances to feel good. Now, Santi Diva answered this beautifully by saying, we can try to cover the world with leather or we can wear a pair of sandals. The happiness, the peace, the joy that you're longing for are always in the future, in the one day mentality that one day you will have achieved all of your desires and have in your possession all the things that will bring you the sense of success that you're longing for. The day before I sold my business, I was fully excited. I deleted myself out of Slack, Asana, their CRM, every tool and software that had me tied to the business. I woke up on Saturday, October 1st, 2022, to no team members, asking me no questions, with no reporting for me to look over, no notifications pulling at my attention, and no projects for me to work on. And the silence was deafening. And it was this void where I finally questioned success and how we measure ourselves and the things that we do in hopes to achieve our goals. Things such as freedom and money and impact and all of this stuff don't land with me anymore when it comes to success, or especially the much regurgitated phrase, I want to do what I want, when I want, where I want, and with whom I want, as success is just a word to point at if we got a result or outcome that we have intended for. I found it more useful to know what's the best action, and for that I use this phrase. The true value of an action is not measured by whether it's successful or not, but by the motivation behind it. We can't control the circumstances of the world, but we do have control of the training of our hearts and of our mind. And in layman's terms, it's the story or the meaning that we are creating for whatever that's actually happening that we can control. See, when we take responsibility, we take back responsibility for the narrative that we are creating for our life, we now are being able to open up and being able to rewrite it, creating a new meaning and being able to perceive it differently. Naval Ravikant, who I see as a leader of modern day philosophy and a thought leader, said, desire is a contract that you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. Now, this then leads me to think, the more objects that you find desirable and the more desire that you them have with you, the more incomplete you are as a person, which entails nothing but suffering. The image of what Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism see as Preta, or the hungry ghost, come to mind for me here. These are the beings that have tiny mouths and large stomachs, that have the insatiable thirst of hunger. Now, constant, never-ending suffering is inevitable when you're in this state because you're craving for more and you're never going to be able to actually satisfy yourself. I was that hungry ghost. I had the tiny mouth with gigantic stomach. I was the one that had that insatiable thirst for more. I was the one that ticked the boxes of success and yet found myself with depression and anxiety. Earning more money, achieving more, and working harder felt like I was just drinking seawater in the hopes of quenching my thirst. But all it did was accelerate my thirst for more. So, just like you and the genie at the start of this, let's imagine you're a lucky person, you have all the desirable things that you want, and your circumstances and your resources are perfect, hence, you should be happy, right? Well, looking back to Saturday, 1st of October, I woke up as that usual and I got straight into the morning ritual that I had ingrained in myself over the years to be a successful entrepreneur. And after meditating and journaling, I went for my morning walk, followed by a sauna and ice bath. I was trying to do all the right things. And then sitting in the sun at around 7:30 a.m., still shivering from this ice bath, I realized that everything had changed, but nothing had changed. This paradox of achieving a huge milestone could now easily sit inside my head, and I understood that you and I are wanting to be happier, we're wanting to be more peaceful, we're wanting to have a greater sense of meaning in our lives. But once I had chalked up a few wins and wiser from the scars from the life of entrepreneurship had dealt me, it was easier to start thinking that we're so smart, that we know everything, that we're so talented and we can achieve what it is that we want, thinking we're so superior because of what it is that we've been able to have achieved. And all of this continues to just dig ourselves a deeper and deeper grave in the belief that we need to strive for more. So when playing that game, we're at the mercy of the outside world. On one hand, I was extremely grateful for how I was able to build and then be able to sell the business. But being honest with myself, there was an immeasurable number of happenings that I had no control over that led up to that successful sale. This is when I asked myself when trying not to shiver, isn't this insane that I've been trying to be happier and more at peace by relying on things I don't control? Now, suppose you're stuck in a bad circumstance. It does not matter how you describe your situation, but let us, for the argument's sake, let's say you're in circumstances that are as bad as possible. For example, we have more than anecdotal evidence that a person who suffers from a medical condition called locked-in syndrome may report personal happiness. Now, locked-in syndrome is a rare and serious neurological disorder that happens when part of your brainstem is damaged, usually from a stroke. And people with locked-in syndrome have total paralysis but still have consciousness and normal cognitive abilities. And with this example, this person, this man with locked-in syndrome can only move his eyes, and now is instructed to move his eyes in a certain direction to communicate if he's happy. And he reports happiness. This is when I had to sit down and get real with myself to then understand, well, what is happiness? Have you subscribed? If not, this is the best time for you to subscribe, whether you're on the YouTube or on the podcast. Why? Because it would be a bummer if you missed out on everything that's to come, or don't subscribe if you're not actually getting much value out of this, because there is a zillion other things that you could be doing. So I'd rather you go and do that. The ball's in your court. And so far, I lean on what was published in 1940, when only in his mid-20s, Alan Watts declares in one of his class works, happiness is a sense of harmony, completion, and wholeness. Watts, with his pithy pointing out of happiness, gives me a sense of direction on this. But I had to go back further to about 300 BC to learn from the Greek philosopher Epicurus. Now, Epicurus agreed with other philosophers about happiness being our ultimate human pursuit. But he suggested something really different from what the others had proposed in terms of how that might actually look in our decision making and our behaviors. Many philosophers suggested that experiencing pleasure and happiness meant allowing yourself to indulge and to enjoy in things of excess. Epicurus, on the other hand, suggested that pleasure was found in simple living. So there are three states Epicurus considered to constitute happiness. It was tranquility, freedom from fear, and absence from bodily pain. So to experience tranquility, Epicurus suggested that we could seek knowledge for how the world actually works and to be able to limit our desires. So for him, the pleasure was obtained through things such as living a virtuous life, knowledge, friendship, community, living with temperance and moderation. And this is where I found Epicurus an easy bridge for me to then be able to embrace Stoic philosophy, as the Stoics thought all you needed to be happy was virtuous. Christopher Gill explains Stoic virtue by saying virtue is a form of expertise or skill, knowledge on how to live well in every way, and a form of knowledge that shapes the whole of personality and life. Bit of a mouthful. Then also in one of my favorite Stoic writings, which is from Letters from a Stoic, Seneca says, a good character is only a guarantee of everlasting carefree happiness. And this is where I found the dots started to connect for me, where I had been living with what was wrong. Simply put, to live virtuously, we are striving to become the best versions of ourselves. And to do this, we start by taking ownership of ourselves and the state of our actual lives. There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about the things which are beyond our power and our will, says Epictetus, not me. You can't control if you're going to get a genie tomorrow morning. You can't control if your partner wakes up next to you tomorrow and says, I want a divorce. You can't control if your 4-month-old baby projectile vomits all over you. But you can control how you act and how you respond. And finally, this is where I started to find myself being more content and satisfied in life. All thanks to actually letting go of outside desires and focusing on what is in my control and my thoughts and my beliefs. So let's take me as an example. I can't control if Lauren, my wife, wakes up tomorrow morning and wants a divorce, sick and tired of me doing my half-assed job of cleaning the dishes or stretching naked in the garden in the afternoons. It's all her choice, and it's her choice alone. Now, that doesn't take any of my power away. I can certainly, and should, control how loving, affectionate, compassionate, and thoughtful I am to Lauren in our marriage. I can certainly do a better job of cleaning the dishes, and I can certainly put some underwear on when doing my 4 p.m. garden yoga sessions. But the Stoics argue that only two things that we are absolute control over are our thoughts and our actions. So inevitably, things will happen in life in which we can't control, and it's our perceptions of these events that followed by how we actually respond to them and what makes these things good or bad. So shouldn't we accept that there is good and bad in life, and that wanting only good is completely unnatural, irrational, and a childish way to live? This is where I found myself having a sense of solace in the teaching of the Taoism, when it is really similar to Stoicism. Just like hide and seek, without seeking, we wouldn't know what is hiding. We can't have darkness without light. We can't have sound without silence. We can't have highs without lows. We can't have lows without highs. We can't have here without there, because if you don't know where there was, you don't know where here is. They always go together. They are two of the same thing. We need the good and the bad. Without the bad, we wouldn't know what the good is. The realization that the natural flow of life has both good and bad got me to then be able to think of that word happiness that you and I and our modern culture use today. It doesn't fit the feeling or the sense that I'm ultimately looking for. Now, this is when I can only speak for myself. But with many investigations and trying to figure my shit out over the past 2 to 3 years, it's been the word equanimity, or even I could use the word peace, that is the feeling, the sense, the emotion that is really what I'm looking for at the end of the day. The chasing of happiness through the desire of attaining more, earning more money, being in better physical shape, ultimately being of higher status, does not and will not give me the sense of peace, equanimity, or lasting fulfillment. Why? Because it's the doing that makes us more fulfilled, not the having. The buyer of my business in our first negotiation said to me, "You can have millions more if you hang on to this business for longer." I knew his words were true. But the price of me having to run the business for longer and not move on to what I wanted to experience is the reason why I knew leaving millions on the table was the right thing. At that moment, negotiating the sale of the business, I knew I had that fork in the road, and it was this thought that made me follow through. I don't want to have more, I want to be more. And as Forrest Gump says, there's only so much money a man needs, the rest is just for showing off. Now, don't think I'm morally superior. That's not the case whatsoever. It's been over 18 months of psychotherapy for me to try and come to what I'm sharing with you today. I've seen every healer that you can shake a stick at, done all the psychedelics. I've had a really good crack at it, to be perfectly honest. As the truth is that I've lived my entire life thinking money was going to solve my problems. Being only a child to teenage parents, I saw firsthand my parents sacrifice and work hard, being able to provide for me. Knowing that we didn't have a lot of money growing up instilled that lust and desire. So by going through my journey so far, I've been able to try and join some dots to try and make some sense, to try and be a better person, and to try and perceive the world and use the resources in my environment. And so I can try and ask myself the question, well, what's in my heart? Is it greed or is it a wish to help others? Now, if you're like me, when I first started out wanting to be able to learn the ancient wisdom traditions, trying to learn how to actually live a good life, it can start to sound a bit esoteric, a bit hard to grasp in your like everyday, actual day-to-day living. And so this is where the rubber meets the road for me. Where hedonic happiness is seeking pleasure for self, it can easily lead to greed. And there is a pendulum of tension between the altruism and narcissism here, which is a part of the spiritual realization of happiness. It was the Greek philosopher Aristotle that brought us to the golden mean, which aims for moderation of a striving from balance between those different extremes, which is much like Buddha's middle path teachings. And according to Aristotle, happiness exists in the rational exercise of the soul's conformity with the virtues such as courage, justice, temperance, benevolence, and prudence. Similarly, Buddhism aims just not to eradicate all feelings, but to liberate them from the attachment of those false virtues. So does living our lives wanting to have no more problems make sense? Do we think it's natural to never have hard or challenging times in life again? Does it sound reasonable that through a constant striving of achievement, you're going to attain everlasting happiness? For me, I can confidently say no to all of these. Rather than clenching with my might, desperately trying to hold on to the hope that everything will work out exactly the way that I want it to, I can relax back to one of Joseph Goldstein's teachings. Whatever has the nature to arise will also pass away. Because when I finally started to understand this pithy remark, it pointed to the glaringly obvious state that is, everything changes. Every dollar you earn, every achievement you attain, every moment in your life is going to change and pass away. And rather than trying to cling on to everything even more, we can actually relax and let it happen, as it's going to happen whether or not you want it to. So the answer, is the man or woman that can fulfill all his desires really happy? I'm now left with a spaciousness, more relaxed, less neck clenching sensation. No. The goal of being able to fulfill all of my desires, the destination of having all of the money, the power, and all of those achievements and accolades, the intention of no longer having problems in my life, these are not things that I wish for. Instead, I lean into the belief that we are personally responsible for our happiness, and it is up to us and each of us to create happiness through our thoughts and through our actions. Rather than sacrificing the little precious time that we have in this life, chasing after the things that we don't have, we can, and likely should, spend at least a little bit of that time paying attention to wanting what we already have. And instead of running away from the reality that life will be hard at times, adversity will come our way, we can embrace it and actually make the most of it. Dare I say, even enjoy it. So walking down the stairs in the dark of night had me realize I had a problem with having problems, and that I had a never-ending thirst to achieve and to strive. And none of those were smart or rational ideas to live by, but many of us do. So now I hope that both you and I can lean into what Anthony DeMello said, feeling the strong foundation that gives us more sense and ease, which is everything is in a mess and all is well. If you've enjoyed this episode and it's vibed with you, then make sure that you hit subscribe, whether you're on the YouTube or on the podcast. And importantly, if there is any guests that you want me to have on the show or specific questions or topics that you want me to be able to cover for you, simply put it into the YouTube comments or send me an Instagram DM. That way I can make sure you're getting the most out of actually being here.